Chapter 23. Luke, Jenny, and the Swamper were back on Allen Street. It appeared to be late in the afternoon. Luke and Jenny were both still thinking about what the Swamper had pointed out. Wyatt Earp, who was supposed to be a lawman, had just killed a man in cold blood. "I wonder what would have happened if Wyatt hadn't shot Frank Stillwell," said Jenny. "Do you suppose that if Wyatt had done the right thing and taken Frank Stillwell to jail instead, that he might have found out who really killed Morgan? And who shot Virgil, too?" "We might very well have," answered the Swamper. "A lot of questions might have been answered. The guilty parties would have been hung, no doubt about that. But you see, no lawman ever has the right to make himself judge, jury, and executioner like Wyatt Earp just did." "But, Mr. Swamper," asked Luke, "since all of you are now spirit people, do you know who it was?" The Swamper thought about it for a moment. "Well, let's just say that not every spirit goes to the same place, and for whatever reason, some things were just not meant to know." He was lost in thought, then explained that the killing of Frank Stillwell had outraged the citizens of Tombstone even more, and that an arrest warrant had been issued for Wyatt and Warren Earp, Doc Holliday, and the others who had been in the rail yard that night. In the meantime, the wife of another cowboy, Pete Spence, had come forward to testify at the coroner's inquest that she believed her husband, Frank Stillwell, and two other cowboys, Hank Swilling and Indian Charlie, might have been the ones who killed Morgan Earp. Pete Spence was now in jail. They walked up the Cosmopolitan Hotel and saw a group of men entering the building. "That's the Earps and Doc Holliday," said Luke. A man approached Wyatt with a telegram in his hand. "The telegraph operator is a friend of Wyatt's," explained the Swamper. "He's warning him about the arrest warrant. The telegram is actually addressed to Johnny Behan, but he'll make sure to take plenty of time before getting it to him." A moment later it was dark again. Then the Earps came out and started getting on their horses. "Uh-oh," said Luke, pointing up the boardwalk. "I see Johnny Behan coming." Johnny Behan approached Wyatt just as he was getting on his horse. "Wyatt, I want to see you." Wyatt sat on his horse and looked down at Johnny Behan. "You've seen me once too often," he replied, and with that he and the others rode away. "Wyatt Earp is riding out of Tombstone for the very last time," said the Swamper, "and even though he'll live to be a very old man, he'll never once set foot in this town again." "So what happened next?" asked Luke. "What happens next will haunt Wyatt for the rest of his life," said the Swamper. "First, Johnny Behan will form a posse to go after the Earps. Riding with him will be such good, upstanding citizens as the Clanton brothers and Johnny Ringo. But Wyatt has plans of his own. He's going to avenge his brothers, and he'll leave a bloody trail behind. People will call this Wyatt Earp's Rite of Vengeance." Suddenly they were standing in the desert outside of town. They could see the Earp party off in the distance. They appeared to be chasing after someone. As they rode down a hill, they vanished from sight. A few moments later, they heard the distant sound of gunfire. The Earps had just gunned down a man called Florentino Cruz, who is also called Indian Charlie by some of his cowboy friends. He's one of the men that Pete Spence's wife said she believed killed Morgan Earp. "They didn't try to take him alive to stand trial?" asked Jenny. "No," replied the Swamper. "By now, Wyatt has lost all faith in the legal system, so he's taken matters into his own hands." "But that's still not right," said Jenny. "I know," said the Swamper. "That's why Behan is trying to catch him. The funny thing is, if Wyatt were to get caught, he could end up being hung for murder himself." "Even though he believes the men he's killed also killed his brother?" asked Luke. "That's right, Luke," replied the Swamper. "Have you heard the saying that two wrongs never make a right?" "Yes," said Luke. "Well, this is exactly what it means. The men who murdered Morgan deserve to be punished for what they did, but Wyatt going after them and gunning them down makes him just as guilty as those who killed Morgan." "And it won't bring Morgan back either," added Jenny. "No, I guess it wouldn't," agreed the Swamper, "but Wyatt's rite of vengeance is nearly over, and it will come to a very dramatic end."